Dr. Hind, the head of the computer science and the managing director of the Master of Data Science in the Department of Mathematical and Computer Science in Heriot-Watt University. She will discuss the topic of AI ethics and the serious need for legislation to address the issues of AI ethics. So I would kindly like to ask Dr. Hind to start sharing with us her presentation.
Thank you very much, Amira, and thank you, Bushra, for a really nice presentation. Welcome to all our participants from very, very far afield. I was just thinking now it would be a very interesting traveling salesman problem to connect all the locations that people are. Anyway, I'll quickly delve into my topic, ethics in AI. Is there a need for legislation?
Are you sharing your screen?
Yes, I am.
Excellent.
Can someone confirm that they can see my screen?
We can.
Yes.
Okay, good. So the ethics was raised by the Eva and also by Bushra, and I'll just delve a little bit more about ethics in AI, because it is a critical issue. So there's a paper that with the title, What is Ethics, from back in 1987. So it's not really a new subject for computer science. It was revised in 2010. And ethics is based on well-founded standards. So it's not something very vague, it's quite concrete. And the key thing is what is right and what is wrong. And with knowing what is right and what is wrong, ethics is, in a way, will prescribe what humans, will tell humans what they ought to do, and usually based on things as rights. So my human rights, your human rights, where do my rights end, where do your rights start, what obligations do we have as a result to preserve those rights, what will be the benefit to society. So rights are not an absolute, but they have to be within a context of society. Principles of fairness have a role to play, specific other virtues such as loyalty, mindfulness. And if I can add here that ethics is not necessarily universal, they're from one culture to another. Emphases may be placed differently. The West typically emphasizes the rights of the individual, versus Eastern societies in general, Asia, put more emphasis on society. And I realized that there is quite a technical audience, but I didn't know who else will be in the audience. I know quite a few of them are not really specialists, so I thought I'll just bring in a very general definition for AI from a dictionary. And AI could be a branch of computer science that will deal with simulating intelligent behavior in computers. So trying to imitate how the human brain works, which has a lot of, there's a lot of debate about it, but that's not the topic here. Another definition is the capability of a machine to imitate intelligent human behavior. Again, questionable, but let's agree that this is this is the definition. So the question is, can we have some examples on that, and what human behavior is typically involved? So if this was a live session, I would pause here and I would seek some answers from the audience. I know I can look up the chat, there might be some answers there, but I think that's a little bit, that will make me exceed sort of what was planned for here. So for example, to name a few examples, Siri, Alexa, driverless cars, recommender bots that tell you where's your best, what would be a nice destination for you, what is the best buy for you, and so on. So these are examples of machines that are around there. And how are they behaving as a human? So I'll not take this. The first thing is these devices will need to understand language. So when you talk to Siri or Alexa, you're going to use some language. And if you use Siri or Alexa or even your mobile phone, just the autocorrect on your mobile phone as you're typing, there's learning involved. And so when you first start using it, it's not very accurate. And over time, it observes what you are doing and it learns. And these are typically associated with humans. So language understanding, learning, they solve a problem for you, a problem like where's the best destination for me, or they can do reasoning. So they say they can do reasoning, they can perceive. I don't know very much about perception, but they can perceive things. It looks like they perceive things and they are able to make decisions. So here is a sort of word of caution. I don't know what's happening to my, yeah. So there's too much hype recently. I believe there's too much hype about what AI can do and not enough maybe awareness of what AI cannot do and what are the problems around AI. And I think it's agreed that AI algorithms were developed with the focus that we need good results. We need reliable results that have high accuracy. But those results came out typically of a black box. And that went at the expense of explaining the AI around, explaining why this decision got made. So if your manager or you as a parent make a decision, your child will probably ask you, why did you make that decision? Why is that? And you'll be able to interpret, to explain and say, or your manager will be able to interpret and explain why a certain decision was made. And here, again, this is a question I would pause and ask, does it look familiar? Do we all remember the 2008 financial crisis? What happened there? In banks, banks started hiring typically physics students with PhD physics students, and they developed tools, highly complex tools that most people who worked in the banking industry themselves couldn't understand. And they were just bringing out decisions to buy and sell, decisions to lump financial products together and so on. And it resulted in an absolute catastrophe. So we have to take, a step back and say, we don't want to repeat that. For AI, algorithms are brittle. It means that a slight change in data that you feed the algorithm will cause the results to be completely unexpected and wrong, because they are trained for certain data sets, and the pandemic recently showed that the human must remain in charge. So if you think about an AI system that did inventory management, and suddenly the way the patterns of how people buy and sell, so maybe fashion was, fashion items were heavily in use, people stopped going out. Eva said loungewear, and suddenly loungewear is the fashion, and these inventory management systems had problems. There were fraud detection systems, so when you buy online, they would detect fraud. I think in fraud detection, I haven't read enough, but I think fraud detection systems did not suffer as much. Systems that did suffer are AI systems that use sentiment analysis, so they read the news, and based on the news, they say to people what to invest in, what to buy, where to buy shares, and so on. I wish I had bought shares in plexiglass manufacturers. They're popping up everywhere in restaurants to shield people eating. Amazon had a fulfillment problem in the sense that when you buy from Amazon and you click, normally Amazon would direct you to get the product from their warehouses. And you can imagine what happens if all the Amazon warehouses were very quickly depleted, and they should not be priority number one when people click on a certain product. So that caused a fulfillment problem. So these are just a few issues that from the pandemic that I thought were interesting to note. The next few slides, I'm going to run through some examples where that are actually problematic and need revision. And in the light of that, the question of do we need laws or not can be, so it forms a discussion board for whether we do need laws or not. And then at the end, I'm going to just cite a few quotes from some legislation that's already around, and we'll take it from there. So in courts of law, so in the US, there's a proprietary system called Compass. So you cannot look, the government cannot look inside and say, how does the system work? It is a black box AI model that tells whether what is the risk of someone reoffending. And judges may simply rely too much on that and not exercise their own judgment, their own experience. And if whoever is interested in this topic, you can read Cynthia Rudin's from Duke, I think, paper on this. And in her paper, she actually says these AI models, these black box models where we don't know why the decision got made, they turned out to be no more accurate than its transparent system, a system with just a set of, I don't know, 10 rules. If this, then this is the reoffense risk, if that, and so on. So that is a problem. I don't know why this keeps clicking. Okay, face recognition. That is another problem with heavily based on AI. Face recognition systems are heavily based on AI. And for the non-technical people in the audience, there is a technical challenge that exists whereby when you develop AI systems, if you want it to be more accurate, then bias will inevitably creep in. So if you train it on a set of people with certain features, if there is a minority group of people in your data set, by default, that system will be biased against them because you want to be very accurate. San Francisco, I think last summer, banned the police from using such a system, which in principle is useful because if you lost a child in a mall, that would be quite a useful thing to have. But on the other hand, it is also very dangerous because you end up tracking people who are innocent or identifying people. Recently, IBM, I think there was reports in the news that IBM stopped using their face recognition systems. Amazon, 2 days ago, they have a system called Recognition that a lot of police in the US, police forces in the US use. And I sort of stepped back at this stage and said, well, the police force are using a system that they don't control because Amazon, with one decision, decided that system is no longer operational. So I really need to look up what kind of contract that was, where you commission someone to, to buy a service, and that service can be just abruptly halted. I'm not saying that the police, I'm looking at it from a legal perspective, so I'm not making any judgment there that that's actually the right decision. Please don't misunderstand me there. So what's the solution there? So a system that could find my missing child very quickly in a mall versus the police targeting innocent people. And there, perhaps the legislation, which spells you can use them, but that is the context in which you can use those systems. Keeps popping. Policing, that's another very controversial, I think nowadays, unfortunately, sad situation. So PredPol, before the latest incident started, in Los Angeles, PredPol was abandoned in April 2020. Because the accusations of racial bias could not be pushed back. There was, those systems were discriminating. In London, between May 2014, April 2015, they trialed 3 systems and PredPol was one of them. And the London police decided we're not going to use them. But they are currently using an in-house system, and because it's in-house, I think might be difficult to look into what's happening there. And again, for the technical people in the audience, the non-technical, sorry, you need historic data to build systems. So what happens is that bad policing practice gets embedded in those AI systems that use historic data. So saying this neighborhood send more police cars because they are perceived to have more crime and so on. Okay, so this slide is on monitoring the consumer. Shoshana Zuboff has coined an interesting term, surveillance capitalism, where our personal data is monetized and traded. So your data, someone collects them and they will have a value and they are being traded between companies. It's a bit scary actually. So people need to be aware, and I think there's a lot of on us as consumers to push back and say, well, if I click here, that's going to be the effect of it. It's maybe on communities to evolve around that, to push back against that. But again, that's a different story. There's questionable manipulation of consumer behavior. So soon Amazon, they look up your Instagram picture and you're wearing a black dress and they put you in a red dress that they want to sell you and post it without your consent. So I don't know how legal that will be. Is there a legal framework that will prevent them from doing this? I don't know. Social media, I'm not gonna dwell on that very much because Cambridge Analytica and how political views of people using the various social media, there was enough written on that. And I think most of you are aware of this aspect. Finance, I think Eva mentioned this. I don't know, Eva mentioned this. In many countries, there is legislation that actually requires banks to tell you why your loan was refused, a certain service. And AI should provide a very good reason. So if you are using an AI system to determine which people will be given loans or mortgages or other financial services and which not, then the AI is not able currently to do that. So there's a problem with using AI systems for that reason. Healthcare. So in healthcare systems, they will cause problems if you have missing data. So someone from a poor background maybe is not likely to visit a health center if with certain conditions they think, oh, it's going to get better. So you will not have enough profile on a certain category of people. So if the AI does not pick up the full patient profile, then that AI system will not be accurate and it'll be just biased towards those people who are probably better well off, visit clinics regularly, and you have a full health profile on them. The sample size is another issue. So how will you make sure that smaller ethnic groups are not underrepresented in AI systems for healthcare? And that's, as I explained previously, that's a difficult task to achieve. But that's in healthcare, that's not new, because for a long time now, most medicine doses are designed by pharma for white male patients. Probably they still are, because if you pick up an aspirin or any medication and you look and the dosage and you think, so is this dosage really for men, for women? There is an issue around that. But that's nothing to do with AI. That's just a separate remark I thought is appropriate to make. In human resources, that is a bit scary. So if you know how an AI system works for recruiting people, for hiring people, that question, does it make it open to manipulation? So can I tailor my CV, put in the right words, the right sentences, write the right text, so it's open to manipulation, so I get picked over someone who does not know how this system works? It's well documented, so or an issue that's well documented, and so even if I don't write on the application that I'm male or female, the mere fact that, if I can call it the DNA of an AI system, will be able to cluster women very quickly in applications, and they will be able to very quickly cluster persons from disadvantaged neighborhoods, from disadvantaged backgrounds, from ethnic minorities. So how are we going to overcome that? And just to tell you how much debate there is still out there and the issue is not resolved, I'll just refer to two publications. So in 2019, Forbes magazine, they ran a short piece and say, do ditch AI in human resources, it is not working. Whereas in the same year, Harvard Business Review was saying, AI will be able to solve all bias in recruitment. So it does not look like there is a clear cut, there are problems and waiting for a solution. So what I did then, I went April 2020, a company called Vervo, and they use AI in job interviews, really spooky. So they use facial expressions, body language and gestures. They use voice and text sentiment. So as you speak, so if I'm speaking now, they'll be able to say things about me. So the organizer, please don't pass this video as a job interview. I don't know what will come out, or actually do, and it'll be interesting to see what comes out.
This is great, Dr. Hind, if we can wrap up in 2 minutes.
Okay, yeah, I'm done. So the actual ability to do the job, so cultural fit and personality. Writing news stories, so Reuters have a system called Links in March 2018, and that was just a support system for journalists. And recently, I'm sure you heard about Microsoft planning to replace 50 contracted journalists, albeit they are not full-time journalists, contracted to look at new trends and suggest new stories and optimize headlines. And so legislation, my last 2 slides, I just picked up. So I just picked, I don't know why this is jumping. Okay, so in Australia, I went alphabetically, I just randomly picked some countries. In Australia, there are 8 principles, human-centered values. So throughout the life cycle, AI systems should respect human rights, diversity, and autonomy of individuals. China has a clause where AI needs to comply with preserving human privacy, dignity, freedom, autonomy, and rights should be sufficiently respected. In the EU, there are 7 principles. In one of them, they talk about trustworthy AI, and you need to have human on the loop, human in the loop, and human in command. So there's a variation there on what, how much command, if you like, the human has. These are 3 interesting concepts. The military use them as well. In Japan, there's a different issue that you have an aging population and humanoid caring robots are very much in use. And you need to make sure that the older people are not sort of mistreated by the robot. Korea has 7 principles, human-centered, so you provide AI to be human-centered, guarantee the fundamental freedom and rights of human beings, and they are all very high level. But the problem is low level and technical, so there's quite a gap there. In the US, our goal is to ensure that AI technologies are understandable, trustworthy, robust, and safe. So a note here, comprehensive compilation, if anyone interested in that, look at the Library of Congress. They have all the countries in the world listed, or most countries of the world. And you can look up at which stage the legislation is for each country. I'm not being, yeah. So that's me, that's my email address. I think the organizer also can pass on my contact details, and I hope you enjoyed that.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hind. Thank you for your talk, for awareing us about the importance of AI ethics and the needs for human interaction beside machines in making decision-making. Now I will pass the microphone to Anshal in order to introduce the lightning talks.
Thank you so much, Amira, and that was a really great talk, Dr. Hind, and also Dr. Bushra. So now let's move on to the lightning talk session. So this is going to be the first session. So remember, ladies, you only have 5 minutes to speak about your topic. I will be timing you.